for free a week. But if you want to support the channel, there are a few ways of doing it. Hit the like button on each live broadcast or video. This helps the channel grow. Hit the subscribe button and select the all notifications option. Hit the thanks button to buy a super sticker. You can do this on the live chat too. You can also join our Patreon page or buy us a coffee at the link in all of our video descriptions below. We are also looking for sponsors. If you want our latest advertising rates and how you can get involved, then email John at nufcmatterspodcast@gmail.com. Thanks for watching.
Critics attack. It feels like I've been talking to myself again. But it's the only way you're ever gonna learn. You look back and it's all in the past. I'm dwelling on the thoughts I cannot say to you. If I don't say the words, then maybe it's not true. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all believe. And it feels alright where the worlds collide. Manipulation stands to make us red. What time you said coming over you. You wish it upon a star. You wish it on a star. You are, you are, you are. You fight back, it's an all-out attack. It feels like I've been taken on the world's machine. Because I want it more than anyone can dream. You look back and it's all in the past. You tell me how you live by all the things you do. Well, you can be yourself, but maybe I'm not you. And it feels alright when they come and say to you, you're the only thing that makes us all.
Good evening. Welcome to the Three Amigos on NUFC Matters, the perfect way to kickstart your Newcastle United weekend. And yes, there is another Amigo on tonight for half an hour. Welcome to Ben Jacobs. Good evening, Ben.
The Three Amigos and the Third Wheel, I think, is the new name for the show.
Cheers now.
Excellent.
We do have mystery guests every now and then. Good to welcome Ben on. And just with all these transfer ins and outs speculation, I thought it was nice to get Ben on. We haven't been able to tie up a show this week. Ben's really busy, as he always is. So I thought we'll get him on tonight. He's got a show, though. He will be on next Wednesday, all being well, with me, 6 o'clock next week. So keep an eye out for that. Just one little announcement as we've gone to and our FA Cup game at Birmingham will be shown on BBC One on the Saturday, 5:45 kickoff, and it will be on BBC One and iPlayer. So selected for television again, just for everyone who's considering going to that game. So, Ben, we did do a chat just before we came on air. The lads don't mind listening to what you've got to say. So let's just go through, I guess, a few of these rumours and stories and stuff and stuff that you've obviously put out there as well. I mean, Almiron, first of all, where are we actually at with Almiron?
Yeah, this was an exclusive broken by us on Gimme Sport, myself and my colleague Tom Bogart, and the situation is the move is expected to happen. That's the long and short of it. But there are no personal terms yet agreed with the player, and Eddie Howe alluded to an exit but said he'll be in the squad for Bournemouth. That's the plan at the moment. Not much actually gets done at a weekend in terms of MLS transfers. I've never really got to the bottom of why, but it might still take a couple of days. So there is a agreement with Newcastle for a fee guaranteed of $10 million US, which is what, about 8.5 million quid, but then add-ons on top. So not a bad overall package as far as Newcastle are concerned, which is why they're inclined to accept. There's a few little things to work out. Interestingly, Atlanta United also have a sell-on clause, but because the amount he'd be returning to Atlanta for is less than the original fee paid, sell-on percentages are on the profit from the original sale. So it's not believed that anything when the sell-on clause is factored in, will reduce the overall package to Newcastle. And now it's a case of Almiron having to agree terms. He has had other options on the table. We know Charlotte looked, but they've chosen to bring Wilfried Zaha in, and he's flying over to America now. So Almiron returning to Atlanta, looking very likely, looking very imminent. But I should point out that although there is a verbal agreement now with Newcastle on the fee side, there is not yet 100% agreement with Almiron on personal terms. But I don't think we'll have to wait too long for this deal to be finalised.
That was the sticking point, of course, in the summer. We thought we'd seen the last of Miggy in the summer, and of course, he didn't want to move. Personal terms weren't agreed, and he ended up staying. Eddie Howe, of course, referred to, was asked by the press today at his press conference about Almiron. Would it leave him short? Obviously, with the injury to Harvey Barnes, he's out for the next 3 or 4 weeks with a thigh injury. So, if we lose Almiron, that in essence leaves you short, on wingers. Is there any deals in the offing that you've heard, Ben, of people coming in? Of course, Newcastle fans are hanging their hat on Mbeumo, of course, from Brentford. People talking about him because he can play across the front line. And Newcastle have also been linked, according to Craig Hope today, to Kubo from Real Sociedad. What's your feeling on that one?
Yeah, I think at the moment there's no plans to necessarily bring somebody in because, as you rightly say, some of these targets that they're very serious about, and Mbeumo would fall into that category, are not going to be available in January. So Brentford's also quite clear that Johan Wissa, not linked with Newcastle but other clubs, and also Brian Mbeumo, not expected to move in January. And from Eddie Howe's point of view, I know it's really easy to kind of think, weren't they about to drop 65, 70 million on Mark Gahey? Surely that money still exists. So if you bring in another 10 million quid for Almiron, can they not spend 40, 50, 60, 70 million and still have pocket change overall, which means that it will reflect healthily on the books? But some of that money goes into club infrastructure. Some of that money is put towards the financial year to balance the books. So I don't think they have a budget per se, but what they do have the ability to do is spend anything if they bring in fees in January. So you might see them be opportunistic in the market if the right target presents itself. But I think they don't want to, which might sound strange because, as you rightly say, if Almiron goes, there probably is room for 2 attack-minded players, one slightly more central, one that's much more of a specialist on the right-hand side. And then that allows you the opportunity to be quite versatile within your team selection. But I just don't think they're thinking that way. I expect one right-sided winger or forward to come in. And it may be the case that Almiron goes now and they wait to strengthen in that area in the summer when a larger array of targets that they like and they think are gettable are going to be available. Otherwise, you're panic buying. But the only sort of caveat, and maybe the guys have got an opinion on this, is if we were sort of talking about Newcastle ambling around in 8th to 12th, which looked, to be honest, to be the case, didn't it, in the first sort of few games of the season, you might say, okay, if they can win a cup, if they can make a push for Europe, fine. But the reality is they may wait until the summer then. But now I think the complexion's changed a little bit because they suddenly realised that they're on such an imperious run of form that you have to call them at the moment favourites for Champions League football. And if you want to get over the line, that right winger you bring in now might be the difference between Champions League football and not Champions League football. And then if you get Champions League football, you've got a whole lot more money coming in to spend over the summer. So maybe the perspective will change in the final few days of the window. But I'm certainly told they've not got anyone pre-lined up to replace Almiron. So it's not a case of you only sanction Almiron because you've already got somebody else in the bag.
Okay, the other story this week was Lloyd Kelly. Lloyd Kelly, of course, just come to the club, hasn't he, Ben? From Newcastle's point of view, it would be a strange one. Eddie Howe played it down today in the press conference, said that it wasn't likely that that he would go. He's just getting his feet under the table. He's just starting to settle in. But obviously, Fenerbahce and Mourinho have been making a lot of noise. Eddie seemed to suggest that was just from their end and nothing was coming from Newcastle. Would you agree?
Yeah, that's kind of my understanding. So I do think there is substance to the Fenerbahce approach. So we're not just kind of talking about early stages. As far as I'm aware, an approach was made to Newcastle and it was roundly rejected. So they don't see Lloyd Kelly as for sale. They're not looking to get him out the door, even though they would be able to turn a profit on him. And you do get scenarios sometimes in windows when clubs are looking to kind of balance the books where they say, okay, we don't really want to lose the player, but by the same token, because of the circumstances in which we got the player, this is basically a quick hit. It's like hitting the jackpot financially if a player that you've brought in economically can suddenly command a fee. But I'm told that that's not how they're looking, because they don't feel that they're going to be able to replace him in any way, shape or form. And it's not just a case of Kelly only just arrived. It's the fact that he's valued as a leader and what he brings off the field too. So at the moment, it's all quiet on the Lloyd Kelly front. And I would expect Newcastle to dive into the defensive market in the summer, along, as we've said before, with a right winger and, depending on the Callum Wilson situation, a young striker as well. And God knows, to be honest, what's going to happen with the goalkeeper situation. I'm sure we can touch on Dubravka in a minute, but it feels like at some point one goalkeeper is going to come in, two goalkeepers are going to leave, but we constantly hear an imminent exit or an imminent entry on the goalkeeper front. And actually, Nick Pope will come back to fitness, and Eddie Howe really likes Martin Dubravka, so that may go quiet in January now. But I think it's key where they want to strengthen. It's also important when they move, and if they are in a position in January where they feel it's better to wait it out for a target, and do so also where that target might say, I want to come to Newcastle now because they got Champions League football, whereas maybe I would have been more reticent to come to Newcastle in January without knowing what they've got. So you kind of have to weigh up the player consideration as well. And this is why they back themselves.
The way I've been describing it, Ben, is that I see us as being opportunistic in this window. That there's not necessarily a set plan, but if the right deal came along at the right price at the right time, they wouldn't be afraid to act on that. And that's for outgoings as well as incomings. I also happen to believe, from information I've gleaned elsewhere, that we're probably more active than people realise. But it's still on that, it's not necessarily with this window in mind. And that the big target is the summer window, where I think they're trying to set up a real spending spree, as it were, for Eddie. And that anything that comes in this window would very much be, like I say, opportunistic.
Yeah, I think you're spot on with what you say. And I think that the reason for that is, one, because clubs plan ahead anyway. So no club's ever just working in the window that's open. You're probably 3 to 5 windows ahead. I might have told the story before, but I was always told by Sven-Göran Eriksson, and may he rest in peace, that when he was at Man City, it was a case of you bring in a player, and then the day after that player arrives, the manager immediately, in Sven's case anyway, would speak to his recruitment team and say, who's the next guy? Who's the replacement for the guy we've just signed? Who have you got on your list for 5 years' time? Who are we tracking? Who are we scouting? Who can I learn about now that might only be like 16 to 21? But, you know, in 5 years' time, when your 25, 26-year-old departs. So as everyone else is celebrating the signing, and you know what? Man City today have just signed Erling Haaland for 10 years. But I bet you anything they've got a list of 4 or 5 targets that they think they can bring in the next 5 to 10 years to, in inverted commas, replace Erling Haaland. We know that in terms of the planning, there's a few names on the list. So everyone knows Newcastle's long-standing interest in Jared Bowen. Nothing is going to be possible now. But what about a scenario where West Ham finish in mid-table mediocrity and Newcastle end up being in the Champions League? I know he's committed to West Ham now, so it's a bit different compared to when the speculation first broke. Same can be said for Noni Madueke, a player that Newcastle have looked at in the past. He started the season in blistering form. No suggestion he's going to leave Chelsea imminently. But if we're talking 2 to 5 windows, not just this window or this year, then you have to start bringing those targets back into the conversation. You've got Brian Mbeumo. Newcastle took a little look at one point at Christian Pulisic, now doing very well in Italy. So there's a whole range of players that are kind of half on Newcastle's radar, historically on Newcastle's radar, opportunistically on Newcastle's radar. But if you can't pull the trigger on them now, then you just have to wait for the right market opportunity. And if you're allocating future budget because your reading of the market tells you that these players are going to be available, that's why when you get accused of being quiet behind the scenes, Liverpool, another good example of this, the clubs are kind of quite calm because they're actually saying to themselves, there's all this noise about what we're not doing, but we know what we are doing. We're just not going to do it in this window. And then when that signing comes off, everyone celebrates it, but very few people go back and go, oh, I wish I hadn't thrown my toys out the pram about a quiet January, because guess what? Your club always had a plan. And the way it's described to me at Newcastle is that Paul Mitchell is this big picture guy. He's the now negotiator. He's building the relationship with Eddie Howe. And then James Bunce behind the scenes, who's extremely valuable and amicable and has a great relationship with the playing squad, the executives, and Eddie Howe. I would say he built an instant bond even quicker than Paul Mitchell. He's the one really thinking about the talents for the future. He's the one laying a lot of the groundwork, playing quite an unsung role, I would say. But I would imagine, because he's extremely well respected, that his work is going to pay off in the next 2 to 5 windows.
I'm glad you put in that little bit, Ben, about looking at things in the bigger round, the 5 years plans, etc. Because that fits in exactly with what's happening today with the big meeting that's going on with our scouting team. The first time that Mitchell's been able to get all of his scouts together in one room and actually talk over what the plans are for the next 5, 6, 7 years. The type of player, explaining to them the type of player they want to be looking at now, well, 14, 15, 16-year-olds for to develop, players who are in the 18 to 19-year-old bracket that they're wanting to bring through, or they're wanting them to go out and watch. So it's interesting. Have you heard anything? The Almiron one interests me because I'm wondering whether that price, which everybody's saying, it's 8.5 million, they're expecting it to be over 10. Do you think that could possibly draw other clubs in? There was a whisper that Leicester City, for example, were interested in Almiron at one point. I'm wondering whether or not the price would potentially draw over the weekend. You're saying that the Americans don't move over the weekend. I'm wondering whether other clubs will. And have you heard anything on Harvey Barnes? I know he's injured at the moment, but that was another player that we heard was, desperate to have sort of first team football. And if a club comes in and can offer him that, and it's also interesting that the sort of players that you're mentioning in that sort of little list of sort of September, they're players that potentially play in the same position as the likes of Harvey Barnes, and could potentially be used as in swap deals, because I think swap deals are the way forward for a lot of clubs to cover the PSR. We saw it in the summer, and I think it'll probably happen next summer as well.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. I've not heard much about Leicester and Miggy Almiron. I think at the moment Atlanta are quite confident that this is going to be completed in the next few days. But as you rightly say, the fee is quite interesting, I would imagine, to one or two clubs, presuming, by the way, that the Newcastle price for an MLS team is the same for a Premier League rival. And you're perfectly entitled, like with Kane and Bayern versus Manchester United inquiring over Kane, you can just add a little bit of Premier League tax and say, if we're going to give him to a rival, then the price is even higher. And we shouldn't forget that when Al Shabab agreed with Newcastle and Almiron said he didn't want to go, the price was basically double what it is now. And not much time has actually passed. So I think it's the fact that Almiron fancies the return back to Atlanta, but now has to actually formalize the financials of that. And if everything goes according to plan as expected, then he'll end up at Atlanta United. Harvey Barnes could have been a topic of conversation this window, potentially. Again, I don't think that Newcastle are desperate to sell. And you have to go back to Leicester's fee. So this isn't a sort of Lloyd Kelly situation where they got him at a steal. They got him for market value. I'm not saying they're overpaid or anything, but I think at the moment, and especially given the injury, they wouldn't necessarily be able to sell Harvey Barnes for much more than they paid for Harvey Barnes. And as a consequence, they would be making a loss on the initial price. But financially, of course, there's maneuvers and benefits to the books now. So it's like a surprise to me in hindsight, because swap deals were just swap deals. You would say, I'm Leicester and I got Jamie Vardy, go to Newcastle, we'll take Harvey Barnes back. We value them at the same. So effectively it's 0 and 0. You take one, we'll take the other. And if there's pocket change one way or the other, then that's the only money you pay. But these mirror deals or separate deals just make so much sense under PSR, because again, without boring everyone on a Friday night, the one that you bring into your club, you are going to amortize. So if you bring Vardy to Newcastle at 10 million, you're going to spread that over a maximum of 5 years, which means for book purposes, you're not paying that much. And then the fee that you bring in, you're putting immediately on your annual books. So even if there is a situation where you'd like a bit more money, that's still an injection of cash that might get you through the imminent PSR cycle, 2024, 2025. And then who knows from there, if you're Newcastle, the whole financial rules may change. And then if you can navigate that through this short-term period of PSR into whatever replaces it, possibly something similar to UEFA's squad cost control measures, you've put yourself in a position, which is ultimately what they did, for example, with the Elliot Anderson deal, where you feel like short-term, get through it, long-term, you're going to be in a very strong position. And I've said many, many times that we still haven't really seen the flex of PIF. We've seen them spend their most aggressively, you could argue, when they realized they were fighting relegation. And maybe the only overpaid deal where they just said, let's splash the money for the sake of it, was the Wood deal from Burnley, where that fee was maybe a bit higher than they would have wanted. But everything else, they've had to be quite conservative. So one day soon, when the rules change, or maybe when Newcastle get back-to-back seasons of European football, we're going to see the flex of PIF. And at that stage, I think a lot of these names that we're linking Newcastle with will be much more viable. Like in the past, we've had Moussa Diaby, but wasn't that interested in Newcastle because he wants to play European football every single season. You got Richarlison, who they've looked at, that might want to leave Spurs, but you need a minimum 40 million outlay for that. And again, it's not something that Newcastle can do right now, even if they wanted to. You got Dominic Calvert-Lewin, who they agreed a deal with Everton for over the summer, still interested in, couldn't agree terms with the player. Why? Because the wage bill is very rigid. They want parity within the squad, not to suddenly give one guy 20, 30, 40,000 more than the rest, and not to saddle themselves with a player that says, I want Champions League money now before the club's got there. So this is what excites me about Newcastle, that you look at what Howe's doing now, and compared to the big six, he's handcuffed, and compared to other teams as well who have got a bit more depth and a few less injuries, and yet you got 9 straight wins. So if this is Eddie Howe now, and if this is PIF now, and if this is Newcastle now, if they can just get that sort of season or two, Europe, by about 2026, 2027, or certainly by about 2030, PIF are going to be able to come in and spend more of their money. And at that point, I think Newcastle will stand a very strong chance of being regular contenders for silverware.
Big thanks to everybody who's tuned in from Twitter tonight. We've got 3,500 people watching. Ben always brings the numbers. So thank you to everybody. And if you are watching on Twitter, please jump over onto our YouTube channel, NUFC Matters. Hit the subscribe button. We will have an hour-long show with Ben on Wednesday night to see where we are with more transfers. Go on, George. You tried 3 times, and I'm not going to steal your thunder now. Go on, mate.
The two humans all shout us down, man. No, Ben, take it back to the right wing. I was just before we came on, I was looking at a website that was linking me with somebody from a top Belgian player from PSV. Does that ring any bells with you?
Let me have a think. Newcastle and PSV. Maybe you're talking about Bakayoko?
Yes, I think so. I think it might well be. It was linking him very strongly, and I hadn't seen it before.
Yeah, Bakayoko's somebody that's actually been linked since the summer, and there were some suggestions in Belgium as early, I think, as November or December last year, that Newcastle had held positive talks and that they'd even agreed personal terms with the player. That's not my understanding, unfortunately. At this stage, Newcastle sources downplay the advancement on Bakayoko. He was under strong consideration over the summer, and then maybe, some say, into the build-up to January, but I've actually spoken about Bakayoko on previous shows, and I've had a lot of the advancement of the links shut down. It's not that I want to undermine anybody else's reporting, but Newcastle is certainly not advanced or anywhere close to Bakayoko at this stage.
Just came on just before we came on here, Ben, so I didn't get the detail, but that was what I picked up, that it was a top Belgian player, and PSV was mentioned as well. So I think that's what you're talking about. So it makes sense. Thank you.
Couple of other things, Ben. This week, lots of rumours flying around. I mean, our list that Barry Hogan does is edged over the 100 mark, I believe now. So that's the players that we've been linked with. But Sean Longstaff is one. Lots of speculation always every transfer window that Sean Longstaff may be, not surplus to requirements, but maybe up for grabs if the price was right. And obviously, that position in midfield is getting more and more difficult for him to maintain. And Lewis Miley now back to full fitness, breathing down his neck, confident performance against Bromley, got a substitute appearance again on Wednesday against Wolves this week. So Lewis Miley almost edging Longstaff out. And when Longstaff did play in the cup game, he was playing out of position, really. So is Longstaff somebody Newcastle may decide that time is right to go?
I think if you'd have asked me this in the build-up to January, I'd have just said, yeah, and moved on. A very short answer for me, I know. But I'm actually told that it's a bit less likely now that he'll go. And Eddie Howe's perspective, same as Dubravka, is regardless of whether these players are going to leave in 2025, why lose them and lose the depth if there'll be no guarantee that somebody else will come in now? And we know that Eddie Howe feels that in game management and when he's playing consistently, Longstaff can be very valuable in that midfield. So I would say interest at the moment in Longstaff is not yet developing. Maybe we'll see a merry-go-round where teams that haven't really made a concrete approach yet suddenly come in. There was certainly some formative approach from Leeds United in the build-up to the January window, but really they're looking for more like a playmaker and attacking midfielder. It's where the link came, for example, with somebody like Emi Buendia, but the Villa attacking midfielder doesn't really want to drop down into the Championship. My club, Leicester, actually did also make an inquiry, but once again, they feel quite covered in that position at this stage. And I think Leicester will be looking for goals. They'll be looking for a central defender, and they might even be in the market for a fullback as well. So there's slightly different priorities for the clubs. And then Everton is maybe the third club that we should just mention for Longstaff. And although they would like to strengthen in that position, they may struggle to do anything too dramatic, even though the Friedkin Group have come in and do want to back their new manager in David Moyes. But Everton are in a sort of slightly limbo position. It's a transition of ownership. It's sort of a transitional season as they move into their new stadium, and they have to make sure that they protect their place in the Premier League. And from Longstaff's point of view, I think he still thinks he can get regular games. He still thinks he can play at the top level as well. So it might be quite difficult to find a deal that suits all parties. I certainly wouldn't discount some approaches for Longstaff in the second half of the window, but whereas it looked reasonably likely that he would have a solid suitor to go to in January, now the interest has just died down a little bit, and there's certainly nothing advanced with any club and Longstaff at the time we're recording.
Okay, Dubravka, what's the situation there as far as you're concerned? I mean, obviously lots of rumours of him leaving and then, potentially going off to Saudi, but his form in that 9-match winning run has been very, very good, phenomenal, in fact, and talk of a new deal.
Yeah, I mean, the situation with Al Shabab is that they felt that they had a agreement with Newcastle United and also verbal terms agreed with the player. And their expectation was after that superb League Cup semi-final first leg victory, Dubravka would go. And I think that's backed up, in fairness, that position was genuine by the fact Dubravka appeared to be waving goodbye. But as I think I've told you, Steve, before on other shows, when Dubravka went to Manchester United, Howe didn't want him to go. When Dubravka returned from Manchester United, Howe was delighted. And this move is not just because Nick Pope's been out. It's driven by the fact that Howe likes Dubravka, not just as a goalkeeper and not just as somebody that can deputise for Nick Pope, but he believes that he's also good enough to be a number one. And in addition to that, loves his character off the field as well. So Newcastle have made great pains, really, to persuade Dubravka to either one, simply stay until the end of the season, and maybe even with Pope coming back, be the cup goalkeeper and lift a trophy, hopefully, for Newcastle United, or two, as you rightly say, sign a new deal. And I don't think it's give him a new deal or he leaves in the back half of this window. I do think that halfway house option of stay until the summer and then Newcastle won't stand in his way is also there on the table as well. I think Al Shabab have just put a bit of doubt into Dubravka's mind too, because when the talks first started, it was the now Wolves manager, Victor Pereira, and now the new manager has come in. And I think the player is well aware that there's no kind of guarantee that Faith Terim legendary manager from his time in Turkey stays, because that's only a 6-month deal as well. So it's mid-season, it's a change of manager. The new manager that's come into Al-Shabaab is not necessarily going to stay beyond the end of this season, not because they don't want him, but it's a short-term contract. So you have to entertain that possibility as well. Add all of that up with a move to Saudi, going from training in the morning to training at night, late games, no preseason, straight into a congested fixture calendar. I think Dubravka's just taken a step back. But what I can add on the Al-Shabaab side is that this is not an offer that they're just going to let linger. So Dubravka is going to have pressure to decide definitively very soon, I think by the middle of next week, because Al-Shabaab, even though they feel like he will now stay at Newcastle because the move is being blocked, Al-Shabaab are basically going to say, if you don't give us a yes and leave right away, then that offer will just come off the table and we'll go and find another goalkeeper. So Dubravka, if he stays at Newcastle, also has to consider whether or not that Saudi offer come summer will still be there, because Al-Shabaab are prepared to pull it, because right now they think he's going to stay at Newcastle until at least the end of the season.
Okay,
all the noise throughout has come from this side. Everything's been coming from Gulf News and from the Saudi news outlets, and that's where some of the random numbers have been bounced around from, and you have to wonder where some of them have come from as well.
Yeah, it's good business, isn't it, though, for Newcastle, because of the contractual situation of the player. I agree with you that there's a lot of noise coming out in the Middle East, which is very normal. And sometimes the noise from the Middle East, as you well know, Mitch, is to put pressure. They do deals differently. So your Saudi deal makers won't get involved in games with Newcastle United per se, and they'll give the player a very short space of time in which to make a decision. And then the pressure, rather than coming in games in a negotiation room, often comes through smoke around the deal, which is where targets come through the media. And if everyone's saying in the Saudi media, he wants to join, he's already agreed terms, what tends to happen, oddly, but this is just the nature of a lot of these Saudi deals, is that they'll drop an email to the player, sometimes out of nowhere, and it will just have an offer. And the player will be like, wow, so I don't even have to kind of interview for this role or speak to anyone. I've already got the financials. And then the player will go, okay, I'll speak to you. And then the player will go, all right, I'm going to join. And then at the very last minute, they call up the club. And by the time they call up the club, guess what? Everyone says the player's agreed. Everyone says the club want to sign them. Everyone tells you what they're going to bid. Everyone tells you he's got his medical booked. Everybody tells you that he's going to make his debut next week. People are already making photoshops of the player. All of the Saudi press are saying exactly the same thing. And then you call up the club who haven't even received an offer, and you go, it's done. We've got buy-in. And even though some will listen to that and say, well, is that not tapping up or whatever? The Saudis find ways of working the system legally, and then the club is in a weaker position maybe because they think, okay, we've got a player that wants to go. And we're seeing this with Lemina at the moment. So he's not yet gone to Al-Shabaab either. And it'll be interesting if Dubravka says yes and goes, because then they've got to get rid of a foreigner in order to sign Mario Lemina from Wolves. But ideally, they'd like both players. But what you're finding, again, is that Shabab have gone to Lemina. Lemina said he wants to join. He's agreed verbal terms. Then Lemina's forcing his way out of the football club. And Wolves are like, well, where's the offer? And then yesterday, finally, Al-Shabaab come and they say, we want to sign Mario Lemina. And now, because the player's forcing his way out and Victor Pereira has spoken publicly about Lemina not being happy at Wolves, we're prepared to give you, guess what, a big fat zero. We want him on a free transfer. And Wolves are saying, the asking price, it's 6 million euros. Pay the 6 million euros, otherwise you don't have a deal. But the Saudis will feel in a slightly stronger position now. And again, this is the case with Dubravka too. So I think they're quite surprised, because usually when they get the word of a player, that's that. You shake hands and the mentality is that deal will get done. So this is what I come back to in saying maybe the deal gets pulled, because if Al-Shabaab feel Dubravka has said yes, and then even if they understand the emotion of playing for Newcastle and the pull of staying for longer, if Dubravka says, look, I know I gave you my word, but now I've changed my mind, I would expect Al-Shabaab to say, we respect that decision, but I'm sorry, the offer's off the table.
Yeah. Ben, I know you've got to go, so just two more questions, quite quick answers, I'm sure.
Sure.
Ian says, are we interested in Tyler Dibbling?
Yes, I can answer that very quickly. So Dan Ashworth was the one driving that move, but the Newcastle interest is long-standing and it's perfect kind of position. The Dibbling situation is he's actually quite a shy kid. He's a phenomenal footballer, but if he's to leave Southampton, it will be very tough. And when he went to Cobham at Chelsea, he came basically straight back to Southampton because that like pressure cooker environment with a lot of young stars was very difficult for him to acclimatise to. And Southampton have made great pains towards giving him a very tailored development involving his family and helping him come out of his shell on and off the football field. And he played excellent last night at Old Trafford for Southampton. So even though Dan Ashworth left, they would still very much like to consider Dibbling. I'd say he's one of 4 or 5 targets in that position, but now is not the right time to go for Dibbling because the family preference, the player preference is to wait. So more one for the summer, I think, than necessarily in January, but a concrete target for Newcastle for sure, along with Brian and Bremo and a few of the other players that I mentioned.
Okay, just short of 4,500 now watching live. Thanks for being on. Last question. Mick Gilchrist says, evening all. What's the chances of Jonathan David? His club needs funds, can play anywhere across the front. He knows Botman, lots of boxes ticked. We have spoken about him before, Ben. I heard a rumour today from somebody that he'd already signed maybe a pre-agreement with Milan or another team. Is anything in that? Or is there still a chance that Newcastle could be in for him in the summer?
Look at you, breaking transfer news on the show. You're absolutely right about Milan, although I don't know about the pre-agreement being done, but they are a serious suitor. And interesting, in the last 24 hours, I've reported that Kyle Walker is Milan's target. And due to a post-Brexit rule, they can't sign both Rashford and Walker. So if they move for Walker, they'll look for attacking reinforcement. And should they do that, David may be on their list. He's going to be an absolute steal in the summer on a free transfer. A lot of people asking me about David now for a nominal fee. I'm told the player wants to wait and either pre-agree something for the summer or alternatively keep his options open heading into the summer to get the maximum array of suitors. Newcastle made an inquiry last summer when some of us felt he might be available on the market for 15, 20 million. And at that stage, the player ended up staying, but there was a realistic chance last summer if somebody had met that valuation that he could have left then. Now I'm not so sure about Newcastle. There's no denying that they're across the situation and that they inquired over the summer. But I'm told pretty clearly from those close to David that he wants guaranteed European football. So hopefully that is Newcastle, but they certainly can't pre-agree anything now with that promise. So it may be a chance for other suitors to get ahead. I would keep an eye on West Ham. I would also, as you rightly say, look at Milan. Dortmund have also considered the player too. But you're talking about a 25, 30 plus goal scorer across regular seasons who's available on a free transfer and not by the standard of the output he's had so far, a particularly astronomical wage. So I think Jonathan David is going to have 7, 8, 9 concrete offers from all across Europe. But at this stage, Newcastle have not made a approach to pre-agree a contract with him. So they've got some catching up to do if they're going to enter that race.
Great stuff. I'll let you get back off now to do your Haaland stuff after him signing a 9.5-year deal. And we will welcome you back on this show on Wednesday, 6 o'clock. All being well. Look forward to seeing you then, Ben. Thanks very much. Have a great weekend.
4,000 on the feed now. As soon as I disappear, it'll go to 8,000. So have a good night, guys.
Take care, mate.
Yes, Ben. Thank you.
Great to have Ben on. Top guest as always. He does bring the numbers because he is a good talker, and it saves us talking as well. You never get a word in edgeways with Ben. We'll have a little break, and we will go with one of our favourites. It's Day I Met. The Day I Met, where we ask you to send in photographs of you meeting somebody from Newcastle United, past or present, or somebody who supports Newcastle United. Thank you for this, Mark Scott. He says, I met these 3 legends in Goodfellas, Dubai for England versus USA. 2 Geordie drinkers and Steve Hasty. Thank you for that, Mark. Nice photograph. I bet your head was sore after that one. If you have got a photograph, you can send it to us on the Facebook group or the Facebook page. You can join or like them. You can also email us, don't forget, at nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. And if you can send them there, we might be able to feature you on the show next week. And of course, play this music. And I can already hear people up and down the country going, oh, not that music again. Yep, the damn. So, George, what did you make of Ben's stuff there today? I think we covered quite a bit.
A great update. I mean, have somebody with a bit of authority and somebody we tend to trust, not just anybody, because some of the stuff you read on the web is just balmy, where there's nothing like that from Ben. It's completely, he's sincere about it, and that's all that matters as far as I'm concerned. I couldn't help smile when he was talking about Diblin and his family, because if you supported Newcastle as long as I have, I could nearly list the players that were lost because they went home as the Mr. Mam, or they went home because they were homesick. We need to watch that one carefully. But he's a star player, there's no doubt about it. But no, overall, it was a great idea bringing Ben on. And it goes alongside. I mean, we laugh at Barry's list. But it's quite serious that because we're Newcastle United, everybody either wants us or would like to have us, so they get their agents talking and everybody else talking to try and drum up a deal. So no, having Ben on was a brilliant idea, and I've enjoyed that half hour. It was well worthwhile.
Steve, we always laugh. We always say we never get a word in with Ben, but it's always great to hear him, and it does clear a few things up.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's interesting as well that you just mentioned there that the list of players that have been linked to. Last season and the season before, we were getting linked to the mercenary types, the types who were coming purely because it was Saudi money, purely because their agents thought they could cash in big style financially. Now, because of the way we're playing, we're starting to be linked with players whose agents are going, you know what, you would suit that style of football. It would enhance your career. It would, you'd fit in perfectly. There's a project going on there. Eddie Howe's doing really well. So, what is going to happen is that the better we play on the pitch, the more quality players who are going to want to come, not necessarily just to be linked to in a list, and that's all positive. But you're right, Ben is very knowledgeable. I mean, we all had our various little set twos with Ben during the takeover period and things like that, because we were a lot more informed of the situation at times than he was, and it became a bone of contention between some of us. But when it comes to football matters, that's Ben's job. Ben is there at the sharp end, dealing and understanding, and he knows how the transfer market works. He knows and has a great list of contacts and with agents and with clubs, and he can make phone calls, and he can dig into what is basically a rumor and turn that rumor into something substantive if there is something there. But if it's not, he's the first one to tell you there isn't. I was going to ask him if he had heard anything about Trippier and Target, because they are two players that I think that Trippier in particular, we know that there's been the possibility of him moving on for quite a while, and I'm wondering whether something might happen in the January window with him. And with Matt Target, you look at the left back position. We've got you can see somebody mentioned Lloyd Kelly. Lloyd Kelly's a player who can play on the left hand side. Hall's holding that position down really well. We've got Dan Burn who can play, and then we've got Target himself. So there's, he's kind of in the fourth box seat rather than the second box seat, if you like. So I wonder whether or not that's the sort of player that may make some space within the squad, and clubs may come in for him in the January window. But apart from that, I don't think there's anybody really other than Miggy that we can seriously say is probably destined to depart. But when players like Miggy go, you let them go with all the grace that and thanks that they deserve. And I was laughing when we were laughing after the match the other night when the chant came up, the Dubravka, we want you to stay, we want you to stay, but there was no Miggy, we want you to stay when he was walking off the pitch, when he was substituted. But I suppose that's just the nature of the crowd, and sometimes fickleness or whatever you want to describe it as. I just put it down to the whole thing down to humour anyway. But no, I enjoyed Ben's conversation. It's always good to listen to, and great to have him on, Steve.
Good stuff, Mitch.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's clear that one of the more damning indictments of PSR and sustainability rules has been this window. This window is as dead as a dodo generally. And that's not just in this country, it's Europe-wide, where everybody's got one eye on some sort of sustainability rules or another, be that from a nation's footballing body or from UEFA as well. So, but also I think to know that there is activity still, and there are things which are potentially out there, but not to get too carried away. And that kind of matches with the message we've been trying to give for the last few weeks, is that, don't expect the spectacular, but possibly expect the unexpected. And I think there's definitely things going on that would surprise people if it was all public. And so I think we just see how, if we can be genuinely opportunistic and crack a really good deal somewhere in this window, it sets us up nicely for the remainder of the season. And I'm quite sure the clubs see that. And they can't be so naive as to say, right, we're not going to do anything this window at all. I still think if the right deal came along at the right price, they absolutely would do it.
Yeah, I tell you what, but another thing, Mitch, is that normally the European window is after the Euros or after the World Cup is quite an active window. But last season it wasn't, and I think that was because of PSR, which makes you wonder whether or not the 2024-25 summer window will be a little bit more active than we expected.
It all has to come out somewhere.
Yeah, exactly.
All of these teams stacking stuff up to make themselves able to spend, that all has to come to a head somewhere, because everybody seems to be doing it everywhere.
Yeah.
Right.
What's your thoughts, George, on the rumours and the stories that we've heard about young Lloyd Kelly this week? But a bit of people in the chat saying that if they got 8 to 10 million for him, they'd sell him. I mean, he's just arrived, and I think he's played his part. Okay, he hasn't played a massive amount of games, but when he's come on, he's done his bit. I mean, Arsenal in the semi-final, first leg, for instance, came on and did a job there for Eddie Howe. And, I think it would be crazy to sell him at this moment in time.
The other thing people are forgetting is that only months ago we were sweating on the top line that we would get a centre-back. We were being pictured in the papers as almost on our hands and knees begging Guy to come because we didn't have centre-backs. Now we've got a more than decent set of centre-backs. In fact, we've got as good a squad as many, and I would say when you had Kelly and Shart, or the lads that played the other night. So I'd be disappointed if he went. The other thing is that, having watched him play a couple of times, he does one thing as a defender that I absolutely think is essential, and isn't in all young defenders, is that he never flinches. If there's a block to be made, Lloyd Kelly will make it. He'll use his body to get to take the ball out. Where I watched one the other night, I forget what game it was. The ball was heading towards this defender. If he'd stuck his head on it, it would have gone for a corner, and he didn't, and it went in the back of the net. It was that kind of thing. Well, that's not going to be Lloyd Kelly, and I like that in a defender, and that's the kind of thing he can pass on to the younger ones as well. So, I agree with you. It would be sad with him just coming in and fitting into the squad. And when you see the little videos when they're all together, he fits in off the pitch as well. He's taking part in all the Geordie jokes and that sort of thing. So no, I'd be sad to see him go. But the other side of it is, if it was beneficial to him, can you really stand in his way? But I don't see anybody from Lloyd Kelly's side saying, I want to go to Turkey or anywhere else at the moment. So, but short answer to your question is, I would be sad to see him go at this time. You used the right phrase, Steve. Too soon. Maybe even in the summer to think about it if we're so cock-a-hoop. But I think having sweated bricks to try and get centre backs to come to us and all the rest of it, we've now got a decent squad, and he's one of them.
Would you agree, Steve, Kelly to stay? I mean, he's just arrived. We do know the PSR makes strange things happen during transfer windows, but we seem to be in a decent position with PSR and FFP, and we haven't breached any rules. So from our perspective, we don't need to sell him.
Yeah, absolutely, Steve. I mean, Eddie stuck his neck out, didn't he, to get him from his old club. It was a player that he admired, and he was picking him up on a free. And he's quite versatile in terms of, as I mentioned earlier, being able to play left back, or he can play in a centre back role. He's strong, he's athletic, and he's relatively young for a centre back. He's got all the attributes, all the physical attributes that you need. It just needs an opportunity to hold down a place, and that's the one thing that you can't guarantee in football. Like when you get into the team, that you're going to stay there. But if it's unusual, Steve, because we're sitting there now at fourth top. Who would want to leave a club that's just won 9 in a belt, off the belt, sitting fourth top, pushing towards European football, and with a centre back pairing in front of him that are not getting any younger? His opportunity will come, but he's got to, when the opportunity comes, he'll grasp it, and it gives Eddie Howe a headache, the sort of headache that he probably enjoys, the sort of headache that we would hate to have in terms of picking and choosing players. We're quite good at doing it on a show, but when it comes to having to prove it, when those 11 players that you pick then go out and have to perform, it becomes a different ballgame. But no, I mean, all the sound seems to be coming from Turkey, very much like Ben said with some of the other transfer activity conversation. It comes from Saudi, or it comes from the UAE, or it comes from various other quarters, and this one seems to be coming entirely from Turkey. And it's Mourinho, and you know that Mourinho can be a little bit of a pest at times. We know that he'll, if he thinks he can unsettle a player, he can do something to upset the football club by putting in a ridiculous offer for a player. Mourinho would go for it. There's no question about that. So let's just put it down to sort of press games, press speculation, a little bit of devilment from some people. And he's our player, and he'll remain our player until him and the club decide that that's not the case. And we got him for a free, and somebody said the club valued him at 20 million. Well, if that's the case, what's the point of somebody coming in with a low ball of less than 6?
Yeah.
Mitch Sean says PSR's ruining football. Kelly's just in the door, and fans are now looking for a quick buck. Fans are now turning into accountants instead of being old school fans, he says.
Exactly, and it would take a lot more money than they've offered to shift them, I think. And Steve mentions Mourinho, and Mourinho's given it away. He's already made out how unhappy he is for Fenerbahce, and it wasn't what they said on the tin. They don't have a bean. And what they're doing, they're trying to force something through by using the press in a very aggressive Middle Eastern way, just like Ben described regarding how transfer dealings get done sometimes over here. It isn't going to work, and it's not worth it, and we shouldn't worry about it. I think he's a far more valuable asset to the squad than that amount of money, that's for sure. Yeah, if they want to pony up and put something silly on the table for him, happy days, and it does help. But we are then weakening the squad at a time when we really don't want to weaken the squad. So, yeah, I don't buy it.
Yeah, these are the sort of games that Mourinho plays when he's unhappy, and then he doesn't get who he wants, and then he can use that as a stick to hit the board with, and then the board will hit him back by giving him the sack, and he walks away with a nice backload of money because he's still got 18 months on his contract. That's the sort of thing. And he's already... Add to that little bit, Mitch. Mourinho's already come out a couple of weeks ago and said he's looking forward to coming back to a club in the Premier League.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, all of those little dots that you join. Get Liam on next. He'll join the rest.
I think he's had a go at the Turkish FA, the Turkish referees. I think he's had a go at elements of the Turkish fan bases. He just seems to be on a mission to pay everybody off.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's not
He's
daft.
not even his third season yet.
Okay.
Just spaced up, set the fans and all.
Yeah, we are halfway through the show. Just a couple of comments. Yeah, I agree, Nicholas. He says the most unwelcome person in St James's Park at the moment must be Troy Deeney, who's claimed that the following about Newcastle: it isn't a desirable place to go and live. You're so far away from London. Yes, and he did say something rather untoward as well, I believe. But yeah, listen, Nicholas, these people don't bother us. You just crack on, mate. And you know, he's clearly not experienced Newcastle and everything that it's got to offer. Yano says if Kelly is on the report at £100,000 a week, he should be applying a lot more pressure on the current incumbents. And lots of other comments coming in about other players. Mozza, good evening, says, I'm more than happy to stay in my lane as a fan. I support Eddie Howe, whatever player he chooses to put out on the pitch. Away the lads. Gary says, it's not about business. It's to keep certain clubs earning more so than lesser clubs. Lots of comments coming in. Keep them coming in. If you want to send anything to us by email, nufcmatterspodcast@gmail.com is the email to go to. Thank you, everybody, for watching. Ben has brought quite a few over to the channel tonight. 5,170 watching live tonight, which is fantastic. Thank you, everybody. We're going to have a quick ad break. Well, we'll be back. We've still got another hour to go. We'll be looking ahead, of course, to the Bournemouth match. We'll have a quick ad break. But in that ad break, if you can hop over to YouTube, search NUFC Matters and hit the subscribe button, it would be very much appreciated. A big thanks to all our sponsors, Skips and Bins. Say hello to low-cost waste disposal with pay-as-you-go and contract waste management. Contact them at their website, skipsandbins.com, or email www.skipsandbins.com/contact. Big thanks to Mr. Vicky's Sauces, handmade in Cumbria. You can find them at mrvickies.co.uk. Email them info@mrvickies.co.uk. Telephone 01768 210 102. Thanks to our fanzine sponsor, United Group Travel. Travel and Tourism Award winners 2024. 2 crew driver and courier, local family company, 3-star plus quality hotels and no interchanges, all excursions included. Find them at their website, www.unitedgrouptravel.com. Email beverly.ugtl@gmail.com. Telephone 01670 632 460 or mobile 0791 666 4174. A big thanks to Media Arts for all the help with the technical side of things. Their website is media-arts.co.uk. And we're also available as a podcast. You can find us on Sports Social, Podcast Network, iTunes, Spotify, and other podcast providers. If you want to help the channel, then hit the subscribe button. We do 7 shows a week. Hit the thumb up that likes each video, and click share to share to your social media. Some Newcastle United events coming up. An evening with the entertainers, 24th of January 2025. Box office number is 0191 243 1171. Or website, Tyne Theatre and Opera House.uk. An evening with Lee Clark takes place on the 31st of January at the Tyneside Irish Centre. Tickets are available on Voucher or from newcastlelegends.com. An afternoon with Celeste Ferdinand takes place on the 6th of April 2025, 12 p.m. till 4 p.m, and that's at the O2 City Hall in Newcastle. Tickets from www.ticketmaster.co.uk or from Voucher. And did you get a book voucher for Christmas? Then why not buy The Entertainers, 1992 to 1997, Kevin Keegan's Legacy by Will Scott. Priced $18.99, also available from newcastlelegends.com. And incidentally, if you are wanting one of those books, the Entertainers books, if you go to newcastlelegends.com or Amazon, we still have limited copies signed by Peter Beardsley available, no extra charge. So get yourself onto newcastlelegends.com or Amazon and order your book today, signed by Peter Beardsley. Okay, time for this. My first tune match, and we've had an email in from Robert Young, who describes himself as 72 years old from Thailand. Thank you, Robert. He says, my first visit to St. James's Park was on the 25th of August, 1962. My father worked for the Pavilion Cinema at the time as a projectionist and rarely had a Saturday off work. For some reason, he had this one off and took me. I was 4 months shy of 10 years old. The game was between Newcastle and Portsmouth in the old second division. Portsmouth scored after 6 minutes through Tony Barton and led 1-0 at half-time. We equalised in the 63rd minute through Barry Thomas, who immediately became my first hero. I had to sit on the wall at the front of the Gallagher end. It was uncomfortable because you had to sit with your back to the pitch and then half turn to watch. And if you turned around, the coppers would make you turn back pretty quick. I never thought of the safety implications then. I just thought they were being awkward. After checking, I found that the crowd was 35,000, not bad in the second division, and the tune were playing in those black shorts that had the white strip around the bottom and the white socks with black and white striped top. I got that strip for Christmas that year. The start of a journey that has been both happy and sad in equal measure. As they say, once you start, you just can't stop. How are the lads? Robert, fantastic. Thank you for sharing that with us. And if you've got your story about your first match at St. James's Park, that's about the length we're looking for, then please contact us at our email, nufcmatters1892@gmail.com. Okay, Mitch, I'm going to come to you with Simon Davies' question to start with. A couple of questions, gents. The PIF sponsorship. Now, as we were sitting at the match on against Wolves, we saw the PIF logo coming up on the boards for the first time. Never seen it. Was delighted to see it. And again, it was like another tick in that kind of box of, people were saying, oh, PIF getting bored. Are they going to walk away? Well, things are getting upped. The ante's certainly getting upped. And, great to see them showing a presence, not just in the boardroom, but as I say, on the advertising hoardings. How much are we expecting the sponsors to contribute to each season to the PSR covers? He also wants to know our opinion, I guess, on the Everton waiver of points deduction. Is that to let Chelsea off, he says?
Right, whilst let's talk about the pitch side thing first. PIF will sponsor everything they physically can to the right limits that they can to stay within whatever rules there are about associated party transactions, etc. Pitch side advertising like that, interestingly, there's a rate card. And how I know that, my late friend Tony Permal, who passed away this past year, bless him, he used to be head of marketing for Rack Pharmaceuticals up in Ras Al Khaimah. And they looked at doing some Premier League sponsorships, and I put them in touch with some people I know at the Premier League who were able to get the info to them. And it's a very, very established set of rates, and certain games have certain rates. Televised games get a bit more, etc., etc. I'm guessing, and there's something else I'll tie in with this, that Wolves on a Wednesday night with not as much television exposure is probably not a seller. It's probably not one that instantly sells everything. And I think when there's a black hole like that, people step up and say, right, we'll fill that black hole. There's a rate. Let's have the rate. We'll pay the going rate. Remember, it's not Mike Ashley anymore. We'll pay the going rate. We'll get advertising around the pitch side. There's no hole in the accounts for Newcastle United and everything's sold out and rosy. Same with tickets. There's been a lot of chat about certain people from different parts of the world being in the ground this week. As far as I know, from the conversations I've had on global WhatsApp groups with fans, everybody who's there has paid for their tickets in corporate themselves with their hard-earned money. And anybody can do it if they want to go and pay the corporate rates to get a corporate ticket. Why have so many been able to get them? Because Wolves on a Wednesday night's not a big seller. It's all tied in. It's all tied in, and so it's what you can get. What can you plan? Remember, if you've got somebody flying in from abroad, like I would be, you've got to try and get your flights booked. If you can do it well in advance, and you know you can get hold of a corporate ticket for a certain game or a certain couple of games. Because I would also venture that Bournemouth at the weekend, it's Saturday, even though it's an early game. When the fixtures were announced, it wasn't. And I suspect that probably wasn't a big seller either. So it wouldn't surprise me to see a pitch sponsorship around the pitch side of the weekend as well. But I don't think it'll necessarily be a permanent fixture there. It could be a permanent fixture if they wanted to. There's nothing stopping them. Nobody said no when Mike Ashley was doing it, but the difference was he wasn't paying a feckin' bean for it. And so nobody cared. And so I think that's what's going on there. I don't think that's a massive indication of ploughing millions in, but what it shows is they're very much committed to make sure there's no black holes in our accounts.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. It's really important. With regards to what's going on with Everton being passed and what Chelsea are doing, I think it's time for me and Steve to sit back and say, we told you so. We said when Chelsea self-reported that there would be some sort of shenanigans and skullduggery worked out, that they would be seeking a financial punishment, that Todd Bowley was very happy to pay any financial punishment he liked as long as it wasn't a sporting punishment. And surprise, surprise, that's literally the phrase. I think we probably used that phrase, Steve, on a Matter show going back, a year, maybe it's even longer. It was obvious what was going to happen. Yes, it would look crass to keep pursuing Everton. It also keeps the legal bills down because the Premier League ran up some hoofing legal bills. And who pays that? All the clubs pay that. Even the bloody clubs involved pay some of the legal bills against them. And isn't that just ridiculous? And so I think you're looking at trying to keep legal bills down, and they're hoping very much they can just sweep the whole Chelsea thing under the carpet. And don't get me started on where that money might be coming from. And absolutely, in terms of accounts where money's allegedly resting and what the government may be doing involved with that as well. But gosh, I'm going down a very, very, very dark blind alley in a big rabbit hole that'll drag us all down. And I think it's definitely a signal that A, the Premier League now are totally incompetent and unable to do anything they want, and B, it's for the benefit of certain clubs at the expense of others.
I did read an article, Mitch, that said that the Todd Bowley money that they're willing to hand over was coming from an escrow account. That was interesting, which tells me that that's the money that's sitting there waiting to go to a charity somewhere along the line in Ukraine. And so it's been creamed off that. It's not coming from Chelsea FC. It's not coming from Todd Bowley and the current owners, Clearwater.
It's coming from the big bad wolf who was the Russian man that took the blame for everything because the Premier League and the government didn't have the balls to do what should have been done, what everybody in football finance told me at the time, put Chelsea into administration and then sort it out from there. They were shit scared to do that. So they'd come up with a cockamamie solution that we're now seeing the result of years later. That Chelsea are going to wiggle out of things with it.
Exactly. And that's
with regards to the question
that money
before,
is there. That money is there, and that money cannot be moved from that account without the agreement of Roman Abramovich.
And Roman Abramovich,
It's sitting there waiting.
But to answer the question before about selling the women's team themselves, yes, they did. And they sold it to themselves. I think it's something 5 times the value of Lyon's women's team, who've won God knows how many European championships and you name it. And Chelsea's women's team are still not the best in Europe. It's crazy what they've been able to get away with. Maybe our best signing should be Chelsea's accountants.
Yeah, I mean, Steve, what's your thoughts on what Mitch has said there?
It's absolutely spot on. I mean, in terms of somebody said the hoardings, the advertising. There'll be more and more of this as we move forward. It'll be, key games, key opportunities. That's what the commercial world operates. You don't just go in and throw crazy money at something. You do something that's going to be value for money from a business perspective, and that's what PIF always do. They will have other companies and they will have other partners that will benefit accordingly on the advertising hoardings as we move on. I'm sure we'll see other companies that are linked some way to PIF who will also want to be linked to Newcastle United. So that's the nature of the beast. And in terms of Chelsea, I think I had me say there. They sold the ladies team for 200 million. They sold the hotels to themselves. The hotel deal's an interesting one, but the ladies deal is the one that really baffles me, because you sell it and then you carry on running it, and then you still carry on claiming the profit and sustainability advantages that comes from deductions that you can make from your ladies team. It's the same with the hotels. You sell the hotel to yourself. You sell it to a company that you own, but you sell it with such a deal that the person who is selling that particular hotel gets the benefit of the profit from that hotel for a period of time. What sort of a purchaser would normally do that? But in this instance, that's what it would appear that's happened. If only we had Mike Ashley had built that hotel, or if Sir John had built the super casino at the back of the Gallagher, we could have then sold it for an astronomical amount of money. But unfortunately, we didn't. We just left it as a load of derelict land, and then we sold it and then sold it back, and we've now got the stack sitting on it.
Yeah, George, we saw those PIF sponsorship adverts coming up, and we were pleased to see them, weren't we?
Well, I mean, my view is that it's good to see them visible. Any sort of visibility is good for the fans, and at the end of the day, even here we get this thing that others still interested, or they're going away, and all this sort of thing. Well, I think that's another example of why they're not going to go away. So, no, I think I was pleased to say it for that reason alone. And I agree with Neil and Steve. The likelihood is we'll see even more of it as time progresses. And the other thing that struck me this week is I don't know. I hear the lads often say on here about football all getting together until it involves themselves, their own interest. There was an interesting question in the House of Lords by a certain vice chairman of West Ham United, lady, whatever her name is, about whether or not the new regulator would reinvestigate PIF in its relationship with Sheikh Mohammed. The Tory minister in the Lords tied herself in so many bloody knots that to shut her up at the finish because she couldn't say yes or no, and then quickly realised that she was talking about something that even her former leader said was good, was right. It should happen to combat the top six, as it were. And she just went on and on and on until, as I say, somebody rescued her with something else. But it just shows the mindset in football that the lads have often say on there. Yes, we'll do it together until it involves your club. Like the voting for things in the Premier League, they'll all do it together till it involves them. And this is a deputy chairman of West Ham, Sharon Brady, saying, will you reinvestigate? I mean, goodness gracious, why isn't she saying, will the government not look at Abramovich's money that they were involved in, insisting it was put into an account to go to Ukraine? And why didn't they sanction Abramovich when they had the opportunity, when they were sanctioning Russians all over the place. It's just a mess. And Neil hits the nail on the head. It's an even bigger mess now because the Premier League have just run out of ideas, I think, and are running on empty because they've tied themselves in knots as well. And I firmly believe that somewhere in the Premier League that there are people who are waiting for the sword of Damocles, the big warrant from some lawyers to sort the whole thing out on behalf of certain clubs. And that's something that's likely to happen, I think. But and quicker the better for me. But it's such a mess, and you know it makes a mockery of all the good souls. The 52,000 souls that went to the match on Wednesday night and spending their hard-earned money and being pressed to buy this and pressed to buy that. In the background, you've got all these people who've got money to burn, who are just milking the sport for all they can get. And it's just depressing. But I think it'll come to an end soon. There'll be a big bang. They'll do something wrong again, and that'll be the end of that. But it's fascinating, absolutely fascinating.
I'm laughing at this guy. Matthew says, "Here's an idea. Why don't we double the players' wages by offering them a leaving bonus equivalent to their wages? That way we could kick the PSR can down the road and in the meantime be champions." I know. Benny says, could our owners not donate a valuable real estate asset to the club, account for as additional equity, keep the asset for a year and a bit, and then sell to a shell company for 50 million? If you can't beat them, some interesting ways of trying to shift things, isn't that?
And the thing is, at the minute, what pisses me off the most is when Chelsea do something like that. The press get up in arms in it for about 24 hours, and then it just goes quiet.
Yeah.
It just gets normalised. Whereas every now and again, we still have some wanker on Fleet Street starting to bang the human rights drum, who's just had a great night at, one PIF-sponsored sporting event, and then being off to watch some live golf, but then suddenly us as Newcastle United fans are the moral arbiters of sport and bloody everything else, it seems.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge that we've got. It seems like everybody's prepared to look the other way and not really ask very difficult questions, when what Chelsea might be doing may be very legal within the terms of the rules, but it's absolutely morally bankrupt. And so where do we go? Do we have to continue to have the high ground constantly because we're held to a different set of standards? It has to come crashing down one day.
Yeah, certainly does. I'm going to ask another question before we start focusing on Bournemouth, and we'll be bringing Borough Mag in then as well. George, Alexander Isak, he's in blistering form at the moment, as is the team, and he's quite right to point out that the team are, it is a team. It's not a one-man team. It's a team, and he's doing fantastically well. He's reaping the benefits and, certainly get all the attention. Currently plays in number 14, George. Would you offer Alexander Isak the number 9 shirt? Because that shirt is historically the shirt that we have our strikers, adorn. Callum Wilson, of course, we would imagine, at least at the end of the season, maybe, looking for a new club. If Callum Wilson does leave and the number 9 shirt is back on the peg, would you at least offer it to Alexander Isak? There's no guarantee he would take it, of course, because he does like playing in 14.
Well, I was about to say to you, the first thing I'd want to know before I did anything was, how does Alexander Isak feel about it? Is he superstitious about his number 14? Because footballers are notorious for being superstitious. Says here, who always used to put his right sock on before his left sock, and his right boot before his left boot, and all that sort of thing. So I'd want to know if we weren't going to upset Alexander Isak. But it might be because of the way he's picked up all the tradition of the club, and the way he's learned to speak Geordie as well. My God, he speaks it better than I do. He might actually fancy the history is wear the number 9, but I would want to do it in a sensitive way, because it just might be he likes the number 14, and I wouldn't want to upset him for that. As to his way he's playing, you saw on Wednesday night for me how Eddie's got the team back. I don't know if you can remember that midway through the second half, Wolves got a free kick midway between our goal and the halfway line. We're all lined up across the penalty area expecting a cross. And the midfielder played the ball down towards our goal post, and the winger was onto it in a flash and should really have had a shot straight away. But he waited, and who caught him in the penalty area, pushed him off the ball, took the ball away? Alexander Isak. Now that tells you about what he thinks about the team, as well as the team thinks about him. So we really do have a team back together. But his touch is sublime. Everything about him's top class. But then you could say that on Wednesday night, from goalkeeper to left winger, they were all top class for me. It was a brilliant display. And if there's a better midfield in Europe at the moment than ours, I'd like to see it. Yes, it'd be tradition and history. You all know that my heroes are number 9, Jackie Milburn and Supermac, and all the same, and one or two others, Ron McGarry, and you can name them all, Mick Quinn. So if he fancies number 9, yes, give him it. He'd wear it with pride, I'm sure, because the way he's going, he's going to push Haaland hard for the Ballon d'Or this year, and that would be a nice way to round it off. But as I say, my caveat is how superstitious is Isak? Does he love his number 14 more than he does anything else? If that's the case, or he just want to change his 14, then leave things as they are. Don't upset things. But otherwise, good idea if he buys it, if he fancies the history it carries.
Isak wore 19 at Sociedad, apparently. Lots of people chipping in with that. So maybe the 14 isn't as superstitious as we think. Of course, we're not being disrespectful to Callum Wilson. He currently still has the number 9 and could still score more goals in it once he's back for the Arsenal second leg, which is the date that's penciled in, Steve. But if he was to go and Isak was to stay, is it something, do you think we should consider at least offering him?
If Wilson leaves and the number 9 shirt's available, then you offer it at Alex, and if Alex wants it, he takes it. If he doesn't want it, he doesn't. It's as simple as that. I'm not one that gets hung up on numbers and shirt numbers and things like that. I think the whole number 9 situation was kind of turned on its head when squad numbers came in. We've seen players wear number 9, and some of us might feel as though they didn't deserve to wear it, and this type of thing. And that's why, in the end, I forgot about it. Yes, it's an iconic number at Newcastle. Other clubs have different numbers. Number 7 at Liverpool's an iconic number. Number 7 is an iconic number at Man United. But as I say, I wouldn't get too hung up on it. If the opportunity arose and somebody at the football club felt it would be something they could offer Alex because it was, I don't know, something that would help cement he's standing at the football club, then fair enough. But if not, just leave things alone and let's get on with it. He scored goals no matter what number shirt he's wearing. Let's face it, he's so hot at the moment. He's unbelievable. And he is at the moment probably the best striker in the world. He's certainly the best striker on form in the world at the moment. Everybody wants a piece of him. He's ours. So back off.
Yeah.
Mitch, shirt numbers. I mean, it is crazy now, isn't it? I mean, we do have all these different types of numbers, but the 9 is still very synonymous in our history.
It is, but I think, again, mindset change. Let it go. He can wear 69 if he wants. I don't give a fuck. Give him the choice about what he wants to do. I'll tell you what I have seen, and I've seen it firsthand with my mate Tony Loma. That number 9 sometimes weighs very, very heavy.
Yeah.
And if I wouldn't want to see him struggle with a number change and feel that's added pressure that he has to, reflect the number. What he's reflecting, he's Newcastle United's striker. He's Newcastle United's goal scorer. And I don't care whether he wears the number 9, he'll be listed in every list of the top number 9s at Newcastle United. And that's all that matters to me. And I think that's all that should matter to anyone. And so, is he wearing 14 because of respect for Henry, because it was Henry's number? Great. Yeah. What a nice... Because I tell you what, from what I've seen of him, if he improves from here, he could be better than Henry.
Johan Cruyff was 14 as well, didn't he?
I did, yes. You're right. Absolutely, mate. So... And when you've got somebody who comes to the club who, on the back of comments that Zlatan Ibrahimovic made about him.
Yes.
And Zlatan Ibrahimovic very rarely compliments anybody other than Zlatan Ibrahimovic. That's not to be taken lightly. It's really not. And there's still things to come. How many one-on-ones has Isak missed this season? Imagine if he got better at sticking them away.
Yeah.
I think he'd probably have another 5 goals on his tally.
At least.
And this is scary to say that. We're talking about the hottest striker in Europe right now. And he's ours. And no one has the money to buy him. Not Real Madrid, not Barcelona, no one. Because 150 million wouldn't buy his right bollock for me at the minute. Because you've just got to look at where, sales are being pitched and who's moving for what kind of money in the last year. And so we're in the box seat with regards to controlling that narrative. And he's made all the right noises. I pointed out his interview with Swedish TV a couple of weeks ago. It was fabulous.
Yeah.
Absolutely fabulous. And so for me, if you want, he can wear any bloody well number he wants. As long as the goals are flying in, I really don't care. And we'll still list them amongst the best number 9s in Newcastle United's history eventually.
Yeah.
Okay, we are vastly approaching the time when we'll look ahead to Bournemouth, but we've still got time to cram this in. Thank you to everybody who has submitted their tweets of the week. If there's an Arsenal fan out there watching in the world of Twitter, your manager certainly stood next to the sign at the right time for this one from the EPL Bible. It is the most perfectly timed photo for me. Struggling to get your wife's attention? Just sit down and look comfortable. A couple of people sent me that this week. And when you're out on a date and your girl is just shocked at how bad the service is. Yes, I've seen that a few times.
That's not the last one.
Was that the last that was flying around the Bromley end at the weekend?
Aye,
it was.
Very late.
It certainly was. We've got a few signs. I think I'll pass on this one though, lads. Don't put that kind of sauce on your burger. And eating instructions on this: open flaps and munch. I think it needs to be changed slightly. I've seen this in the local supermarket a couple of times. I've never tried it, lads.
Interesting.
Yeah. And painter and decorator, interior and exterior finishes: New York, Paris, Madrid, but mostly Glasgow area. Thank you to Jimmy for this. Tweet of the week, he said, America bans Pornhub, and then 3 days later, there's a penis-shaped blizzard set to blanket plains and east coasts in snow and ice. Only in America, Jimmy. Only in America. Only a couple of days till you get Donald Trump back. That should be interesting. And another one from Jimmy says, my wife's water bottle came out of the dishwater like this, but she's insisting on keeping it, which is really weird. Thanks again, Jimmy, for that one. This was on a Ford worksheet. Customer states between 115 mile an hour and 122 mile an hour. It has no acceleration. That's Nigel Mansell's car. And my cat's found my slipper and apparently is now the Pope.
Oh, class.
It is a classic, isn't it? Absolute classic. I'll leave my shoes so far apart that if a burglar comes in, they think I'm big. Very Very clever. And Jody Marsh, great this. Somebody commented in our comments this week. Mark Clothier, he put, "You've still got it." Jody went, "Thank you so much." And then Mark's wife chipped in, "You don't send me messages like that, and I'm your wife."
Yeah.
Brilliant. Jimmy Moore again. It is my life tattoo. He says, fortunately, the majority of tattooists are extremely good at their job, but this one I'm just not sure about. And when online dating goes wrong, lads, Tinder surprise.
Oh.
And this guy, well, he changed the game. Very subtle. And Soda Pop Kid sent us this one. Another great actor who's wasted his life on drugs and alcohol. Sad as they are to D2 like that, it has to be said. NUFC Matters Facebook group, and Colin Walker sent this one. We're trying to teach our 4-year-old Spanish, but he doesn't know how to say please yet. That's poor for 4.
Oh.
Very good. Very good. Des, he says, somebody else has a poetic license. He's been reading me poetry. Here I sit, broken-hearted, came to shit, but only farted. 2024. Brilliant, that, Des. Thank you for that, mate. And another one of those signs from Stephen Kennedy. Welcome to the Clit, Forest Recreation Area. Why funk matter, he says, 2022 edition. And
that's difficult to find.
yeah, this isn't difficult to find. Why does this chicken, he says, remind me of a 30-year-old single mum? Stephen, you're going to end up getting banned from our Facebook group. Not by me, but by Facebook, I'm afraid. Facebook have suddenly started reporting your pictures. I don't know why. It's a chicken upside down. Life hack: before drinking, eat liver so that the alcohol doesn't know which liver to attack. That's a handy idea, and cuts really affecting everybody across the UK now, including the police, it seems, by this photo that's been sent in by an eagle-eyed viewer this week. Thanks to Jimmy as well for this. The love rug strokes your body as you make love. Let us know how it's coming on, Jimmy. Interested to get your report on that. And please do not feed the sharks. A farmer's attempt at scaring crows reaches new levels this week in Cornwall. Fantastic, that. We do like a Star Trek one on here. Here's a new one. A man just fell off the roof of the nightclub. Who was it? All I know is that he was not a bouncer.
Oh.
Ba-dum. And be careful when you shop online. We ordered a German Shepherd, and now this guy lives with us. Could have been a Steve Hasty lookalike in the past.
No, definitely not.
And another tweet of the week from Jimmy. Here's Lissandro Martinez in 2 centimeters of snow.
Very good.
Very okay. We'll get down to the last few here. Thank you to Rob Mitchell for this. Dancing Queen, young and sweet, only 17. There's a bit of singing for you guys. I know everybody enjoys that. And oh my God, my dad's an electrician at the zoo, and look how he spent this morning. I'm crying. And then the reply was, well, your dad's so small.
Yeah.
And congratulations to this guy. He's actually found the G-spot.
Nice one.
In between F and H, of course. And one for Steve Wraith's sing-along, says Steve Middlemas. Cop, turn around. Me, every now and then I get a little bit lonely. Never coming round. Turn around. And then he gets tears out. Thank you for that, Stephen. People just like me to sing on this show. I'm not sure why. Here's another one of those Facebook names. Gemma Pell. Imagine the trouble that she has trying to introduce herself in France.
Yeah.
And another car sign. Sorry for the damage to your car. I can't afford to fix it. I'm just pretending to write down my insurance information because people are watching me.
Oh, naughty.
And one for the Amigos again from Stephen Kennedy. He says, if you don't see the chair, you need an eye test. And is this from Stephen Kennedy? Yeah, it is. No, it's Jimmy Moore. Tweet of the week. He says, better reading than I got in school. Wet beavers looking for wood. Any good, Jimmy? Winner this week. Anything is possible with ice cream. And then the sign underneath it, no ice cream.
No ice cream.
Thank you to everybody. Thank you to everybody for sending these in. Oh yeah, I got that one as well. Woofer and a subwoofer. Thank you for sending that in. It is one of them, isn't it? Or if you've got a tweet of the week, get yourself onto our Facebook group or Facebook page. Just search NUFC Matters. Join or like, or you can send them to our email, nufcmatters1892@gmail.com, and we'll feature them next week. And it's welcome to Joseph. How are you, Joe?
Good evening, gentlemen. You all right?
Very good, mate. Very good.
Yeah.
See you. And as always, we start to look ahead now to the game at the weekend. Newcastle United are taking on Bournemouth. It's the Eddie Howe derby tomorrow, and we've got the early kickoff. It is a 12:30 kickoff live on TNT Sports. Eddie Howe's press conference revealed that Fabian Shaw should be available after missing Wednesday's victory over Wolves due to illness. Still on the injury list, Harvey Barnes, Callum Wilson, Jamal Lascelles and Nick Pope. There is a provisional return date of the Arsenal Carabao Cup semi-final penciled in for Callum Wilson, and Pope should be in contention for the Premier League visit to Southampton, which is on Saturday week. The departure of Miggy Almiron does look likely, as we talked about earlier in the show, but he may still be in the match day squad tomorrow, so it would give us the opportunity to say a rather sentimental farewell to Miggy Almiron tomorrow. As for Bournemouth, well, Areola's side have been affected by injuries. Their forward duo of Evan Nielsen and Enes Unal are both sidelined for the immediate future. They did bring back in their striker Daniel Jefferson from his loan at Watford, while Max Aarons, he's moved on to Valencia. Ahead of their trip to Tyneside, Bournemouth drew 2-2 with Chelsea at Stamford Bridge in the Premier League on Tuesday, extending their unbeaten run in the League and Cup to 10 games. Justin Kluivert, of course, the son of former Newcastle United player Patrick Kluivert, he scored 7 Premier League goals this season, but 6 of them have come from the penalty spot. Referee tomorrow is Stuart Atwell. He last took charge of a Newcastle game in the 4-0 win over Ipswich. And VAR, well, that will be Peter Banks. If you are unable to get to the game, why don't you pop into Freight in the Big Market, the Dog and Parrot on Clayton Street West, or the Prince on Pudding Chair. The game will be televised in all of those bars. As always, we have Toon Stato to give us his take on the game tomorrow.
Hello. Eddie Howe's record-breaking Macs are back in action tomorrow at St. James's Park against Bournemouth. Let's look at the pick of the stats for the game tomorrow. It's a 12:30 UK time kickoff, and Newcastle actually is undefeated in the last 6 games, starting with the early kickoff. 4 wins and 2 draws. This season only the draw against Man City and the win at Tottenham away from home were both early kickoffs. Everybody already knows Newcastle has 9 consecutive wins, equaling the best ever record from the history of the club, with Kevin Keegan in 94, towards the end of 93-94 and the beginning of the 94-95 season, and under Rafa Benitez in the championship when they won 7 games in the league and 2 games in the League Cup. If they win tomorrow, they set a new record in the entire history of the club, 10 consecutive wins, La Decima, as Real Madrid would call it. Now, when it comes to players, Alexander Isak broke the record of 8 consecutive games in the Premier League with scoring a goal. So far, Shearer and Joe Willock have scored in 7 consecutive appearances. Only 2 players have scored in more consecutive games than Alexander Isak in the history of the Premier League. Jamie Vardy holding the record with 11 and Ruud van Nistelrooy with 10. Daniel Sturridge also did 8 goals back in 2013-2014 season. When it comes to Bournemouth, they are on a record run themselves, 9 games unbeaten in the Premier League, 5 wins and 4 draws. And Justin Kluivert, the son of former Mark Patrick Kluivert, has scored 6 penalties, which is the highest number of penalties scored in the Premier League this season. They're very prolific away from home. They score almost 2 goals on average in every away game. They score actually more than in their home games. Let's see if we enter the record books tomorrow, already in Champions League spot. It's shaping up to be a fantastic season. However, lads.
Over to you, Joseph, for some tune tips.
Thank you, Stephen. Stewie Penman's just texted me and said, it looks dark in here, but I don't want anyone to worry. I've just opened the window. It's just pollution. Don't worry, I'll be fine. I'm used to it. So the dreaded early kickoff. Beware the early kickoff against our championship rivals. Bournemouth, we are a very, very short 13 to 20, so the bookies really, really fancy us to continue our win and run. The draw is just over 3-1, and Bournemouth are just under 4-1 to win the game. As I say every week now, goals are expected 6-10 if you think both teams will score in the game, and 0-0 is a massive 16-1. Surprisingly, Alex Isak to continue his run is just under evens. So there's a couple of specials floating about depending on which bookmaker you use. Have a look at Alex Isak's prices for tomorrow, because you might just get a decent return back on your money. Aglu is 2-1. I think I meant AG10, but I've actually wrote Aglu. I think that's Anthony Gordon. Jacob Murphy is 16-5. Big Sven is 8-1, and Big Dan is 9-1 if you fancy one at the back post. Bournemouth do have some cracking attacking players. They're very dangerous. Antoine Semenyo is favourite to score any time for them in the game at 3-1. Patrick's lad is 16-5. And that's the same for Sinistera, who I think is also a cracking footballer as well. 1-0 Newcastle, 17-2. 2-0 is the same price. And Stewie, if I can see you through the smog, you can have 11-1 for the 3-1. Ones each, 7-1. Twos each, 12-1. And if you think Bournemouth will nick the points, 1-0 is 16-1. And 2-0 is 28-1. Red card in the game, 15-4. 2-1 if you think there'll be a penalty. And I text Steve Hasty in distress after the game on Wednesday. My How Out campaign is in absolute tatters, and I really don't know what to do. So without getting carried away, we are now 11-10 to finish in the top 4. And 50-1 if you think we'll hunt Liverpool down and win it. Please gamble responsibly and beware the early kickoff. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. I just want to thank everybody in the chat. This is it's a record-breaking show for NUFC Matters. 6,000 people watching live, which is incredible. Thank you to Ben, of course, for coming on and kickstarting it, because we do put it on Twitter occasionally, and putting it onto Twitter, Ben retweeted it, and it's just picked up some traction. So please, we don't broadcast on Twitter all the time. We do broadcast on YouTube, and it costs nothing to subscribe. So please join the channel if you can. Search NUFC Matters if you're of a Newcastle persuasion. If you follow another team, we do give a level-headed opinion on everything on here. So please search NUFC Matters and just hit the subscribe button. As I say, it is free. It has dropped to 600 since Joe joined it, which is rubbish, Mark. It's increased, man. His fan base is, bro. Chipper said there's more watching this than Sunderland's FA Cup tie.
Close.
Mark says he loves you, Joe. So there we go. So George, just coming to you first. Obviously, the match tomorrow. Look, it's a great run we're on, and when we are realists on this show, a run can come to an end at any time. But having watched Newcastle, at this moment in time, with an unchanged squad, really an unchanged team, you look at this and if Newcastle are at the races tomorrow, they're a match for anybody. We've already proved it. Manchester United away, Arsenal away in the semi, Liverpool at home. You name it, we've played them this season, and we've given everybody a game. So Newcastle turn up tomorrow with the game plan and play well. Ultimately, it's we will give Bournemouth a game. Yes, Bournemouth are on a good run themselves. Something's got to give tomorrow, George. What do you think's going to give?
Well, you lads know that persistently I've said for a long, long time, if the right Newcastle turns up, we can beat anybody. It's as simple as that for me. And I'm always the optimist. But the signs, and I think I've already mentioned, the signs for me that it's slightly different at the moment is that Eddie's got them back in harmony, total harmony. And I pointed out the Isak defence of the free kick on Wednesday night, which it was just great. Here he is, top goal scorer, and he's still willing to run 50 yards back the other way to stop somebody shooting on the goal. With that kind of spirit across the team, in the way the team's playing, we Bournemouth are good, but you know we can match them. Everything that they do, we can do. The other thing is that I mean, all know I'm a Shah fan. I couldn't help but notice that the one thing we missed on Wednesday night was those long through balls that come from Fabian Shah. So we've got a conundrum, what a conundrum it is as well to juggle those centre backs to see how we can get best out of them. But wherever it goes for me would be suitable. I can't see any change in the team if he can help it. I think the team would be as is, and I wouldn't argue about that. And as I say, if they all turn up the way they did on Wednesday, then we've Bournemouth. As I did with Wolves, I've tried to watch a couple of Bournemouth matches to see how they play and where they play. Yes, they score goals away from home, but like Wolves did, they leave big holes at the back, and which our runners could make hay with. So I suspect the Bournemouth team that will play at St James's tomorrow will come out with a slightly different formation to the one that I've been watching, because that's what happened with Wolves. I watched Wolves, and then the Wolves that played on Wednesday night suddenly became a stock midfield instead of charging forward. And I think that'll happen with Bournemouth. So I'm cheerfully optimistic that the run will go on, and we can look forward to at least a 2-0 win, in my view.
Okay, 2-0 win. Mitch, what's your feelings about the game? I mean, Eddie Howe's had success in the League Cup against Bournemouth.
I'm going to use something else I bang a drum about. Mentality. Change it. I can see people saying, oh, he's never beaten Bournemouth in the league. Tomorrow's the day it might come to an end. Did Edmund Moses, when he won 122 consecutive races, go into every race thinking this is the one I'm going to lose today? No. And is it arrogant or overrated? I saw somebody saying, have I compared Isak to Henry? Yes, I have. That's what, if you go back and listen to it, that's what I said was he's got the potential. He can get better. Remember when Henry came to Arsenal, he was a failed winger in Juventus.
Yeah.
There's potential there. Our mindset needs to change. Tomorrow, records are there to be broken. And we should be saying, we are here to break records. Not, we are here to fuck it up again. Because that's what Newcastle always do. We're on the riding the crest of a wave. Even Man United fans, as shambolic as they are at the moment, if they want to run like this, would you hear them saying, oh, we might lose tomorrow against Bournemouth at home? Would you? Buggery. In fact, you'd be sick of that cockiness. You'd be sick of them coming out with it. Liverpool fans wouldn't be coming out with that at the moment. You'd be sick of them coming out with shite about Szoboszlai being the best midfielder in Europe, which he bloody isn't. So for me, all these things, Howe hasn't beaten Bournemouth in the league, well, that could change tomorrow. Isak, would you back against him scoring tomorrow? Not in current form. Bournemouth are playing well, and bearing in mind they're missing something like 7, 8, 9 players, and 2 of them are strikers. So what they did against Chelsea was actually quite magnificent, really. But we looked at our games when we beat Man United, Arsenal, and Tottenham and said, "Oh, we're going to be knackered for this next one. It's going to be so difficult." And we saw it through. Why aren't Bournemouth going to be knackered after the effort they put in against Chelsea through the week? And they've had a short time to recover. Okay, admittedly, a little bit longer than us. But they're down players. They're playing players out of position. And even Eddie hinted at that in his press conference about how well they'd done, and they'd brought somebody right back who hadn't played there and he'd just come back from injury and da-di-da-di-da. we hold all the cards going into this game, and I would hope we can now play them properly. We beat Wolves in the midweek, and we never got out of third gear. You always felt there was something else there. We weren't at our best. We could have easily conceded at least one goal, but we didn't. And now we go to another game, reset, recharged, full of energy, full of positivity. I want that stadium bouncing. It'll be bouncing in here in Dubai tomorrow. We've got, I think, 180 booked for tomorrow. With it being the early kick-off and being on a Saturday, we're going to have an absolutely rammed bar. And it's going to be bouncing. And I hope St James's Park is. And I think it's one of these things where the crowd and the team feed off each other. And I would love to see what put Bournemouth to the sword.
Okay, it's time to get the dice out, Mitch.
The dice is here. And the dice says, after all of that, 2-1, which I would still take. All that matters right now is 3 points. Personal prediction, 3-0.
You're going for 3-0. I went for 2-1 last night. I always give my prediction on the Gibbo show. So, yeah, 2-1 I've gone for. Joe, feeling confident? Are we going to get a win? And if so, what's your prediction?
Yeah, why not, Steve? I think the games that we've won recently, haven't we? Whether it be, if we can get something against Arsenal, if we can get something at Old Trafford, it'll be close against Tottenham. We've beat them all. We've beat whoever's been put in front of us. I do think, I take Mitch's point. I do think there was a third gear element of the performance on Wednesday. The game was closer than the scoreline suggested. Wolverhampton Wanderers had some very good chances, and on a different day, would it have been better? But different. But you know what? It wasn't. We got another 3 points. We had a comfortable win. I think we escaped relatively well on the injury front, and the lads are absolutely buzzing. Even to the point now of just nonchalantly celebrating. They weren't going wild. Just stood there congratulating each other and thanking each other. Not for being greedy footballers. It's absolutely brilliant to see. Any other circumstances, I'd have probably been mega confident, but this is a great season for Bournemouth. They changed the manager and they've had a real upturn. They're not a million miles behind us in the league, and I've got to say that. But, I'm not looking at anything negatively tomorrow. We've won 9 games in a row. The lads are on fire. The forward line is buzzing. The defence looks rock solid. And arguably, never mind Szoboszlai, we've got the best midfielder in world football at the moment. So, do you know what? Yeah, bring it on. I get a lot of pelters for being a bit negative and a bit safe and a bit kind of cautious at times. But as I say, my How Out campaign is all but dead and buried now. So I have a funny feeling we'll win the football match. I'm always really cautious of the early kickoff because sometimes it throws up results you don't expect. But you know what? Why not? Let's get up there. Let's get behind the lads. They'll all have big smiles on their faces. Bournemouth won't be looking forward to it. And I think we win 2-0.
Okay. Steve, last but by no means least, how are you feeling about the game?
I'm feeling very confident because so is the squad. So is the self-belief that those players now have is tantamount to an extra point or an extra goal before you even kick off. Playing out of their skin, playing remarkably well, playing like a team. We're not relying on one individual. There's goals coming from all over the pitch. Performances, you look at Isak and he scores 2 goals and everybody's raving about Tonali and they're raving about Bruno and they're raving about Joe Linton. That says an awful lot. We go 3-0 up and we immediately take off 3 strikers. We finished that game with the last 20 minutes with 3 players up front that didn't start. That says an awful lot for the way that we can see out a game. Joe's right, there were opportunities that they had, but they didn't take them. We are getting opportunities and we are taking them. Some interesting, little asides. I mean, Mitch mentioned the players that are missing. Yes, they've lost 2 of their main strikers. They've had to bring a striker back from loan at Watford. They've got Kepa in goal now, who used to be at Chelsea. He didn't play on midweek for whatever reason, but he'll potentially be back in goal tomorrow. I think he's one of those goalkeepers that we've always liked playing against as well. So I think it's going to be an interesting one. They are crippled by injuries, but they're sitting with 34 points and 8th in the league, and you can't knock that. You can't knock what a club that only has 10 or 11,000 capacity is doing at the moment in the Premier League, showing the big boys up. And I don't think they're getting the credit that they deserve. I don't think the manager is getting the credit he deserves. But having said that, I think that we will go in with an unchanged lineup, and that in itself tells me that we'll be heading for a 3-1 Penman.
Positive show tonight, chaps. As always, just want to thank everybody for watching. 6,160 of you still tuned in. Thank you for your support tonight. Absolutely brilliant. And we never take it for granted. We always say that, but we certainly don't. If you are watching on Twitter, don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. NUFC Matters is the place to go. We will play out with one of Elliot's jokes. I told a volcano joke in the pub last night. The whole place erupted.
Oh dear.
Cheers, Elliot. And last but by no means least, just on behalf of me, George and Steve, just want to say thank you to Gary and Sharon. You know who you are for what you did this
thank
week.
you.
It was much
Brilliant.
appreciated. We don't need to say any more. I know you're not after any other thanks or publicity, but just thank you for entertaining us this week. It was an absolute pleasure. The pleasure was ours, and I'm sure Mitch and Stu will take you up on your kind offer when they are back in the country. Thanks again, everybody, for watching. 3's a crowd tomorrow morning, 9:30, 10:30, all being well. And then we've got the professional.
Finish on a bit of history.
2 seconds, George, please.
Okay,
5 o'clock on Sunday night, we've got the professionals. That'll be an hour and a half with me, Mitch, and Stu, looking back, hopefully.
They'll probably be very hungover, Mitch.
Probably very hungover, Mitch, looking back on the Bournemouth game. Okay, George, you want to finish on a bit of history?
Yeah, in Robert's first match, he talked about the strip that he saw with the white rings around the bottom of the shorts. Well, I happened to be fortunate enough to wear that strip a lot of times. Designed by Charlie Mitten, the then manager. It was very comfortable, had a beautiful colour, which everybody called the continental colour, or thought were very smart. But the socks, which were white with black and white striped tops, were awful because there wasn't a knitting machine that could make them in one, so that to make them in two. Where the stripes met the white, there was a hem, and it knackered your legs when you played.
Great stuff. Thanks, everybody, watching. Have a good weekend. The football certainly won't spoil it. Take care, everybody.
Take care. See you tomorrow,
See
George.
everybody.
Cheers, everyone.
Thanks again. Thank you.